Well, let's get into it. I have to start, Teeny, with where you sat at the end, which was on the jury bench, unfortunately. But you did have a vote to cast, and it was for Rachel. Now, obviously, you felt a certain way about Sam even on your way out. You had a relationship with Sue, but was your vote always locked in for Rachel, or was there something said at the final tribal council that like really rubber stamped it for you that you were going to vote for her to win?
So actually, it's a little bit different. To be honest, going into it, I was really, really sure that I was going to vote for Rachel. And then during the tribal council, I had a big conflict when I was listening to Sam. And at many points, I really contemplated writing Sam's name down and voting for him. But at the end of the day, Rachel played just this dominant, unique, incredible journey of a Survivor game. And I said in my voting confessional when I wrote for her, like, you changed the way that I look at the game of Survivor in a way that I kind of like thought was unmovable for me. And for that, I have to give you my vote. But for sure, it was Sam. I was really impressed with Sam. I think Sam played the which is contrary to maybe a lot of things that I said on the show, and I'm aware of that. But Sam played the type of game also that, like, watching at home, I feel like I would be really, really rooting for. And I love the scrappiness of it. Operation Italy, I'm so honored to have been a victim of it. It's so cool. So yeah, I think it was close for me. But ultimately it went to Rachel.
I know you only spent a short amount of time in Ponderosa as a juror, but did you get a sense from like reading the temperature of the jury that they were kind of as open-minded, or did it feel like the way kind of Genevieve was expressing, like, well, Rachel's just got to kind of support the game we perceive that she had, and she's got this in the bag?
Think about the people who were at Ponderosa, Mike. You got Andy, you got Genevieve, you got Caroline, you got Gabe. You can't even understand the lengths to which we discussed all of the things about the final three and what they needed to say. There was so much endless discourse. There was so much breaking it down, what we wanted to hear, what we needed to hear, what kind of margins needed to be moved for each person. And I think there was open-mindedness, but there was also kind of an underscore of just this undeniable recognition of the game that Rachel played. And you know I think that was something that we all felt. But there was so much endless conversations about it.
So the day before, obviously, watching things, unfortunately, for lack of a better term, kind of go down in flames. I mean, the winds of fate blew in so many different directions for you this season and quite literally manifested here. I'm curious because people were asking in the moment, some people had said that you were allowed during fire making to like stand up and block the breeze as you were watching things, go away from your direction. Did you think about trying any last minute stuff to try to curtail that flame? Or at that point, was it like, yeah, Sam's mounted too good of a comeback at this point. My chances are done.
I mean, I really wish I had Twitter out there in that moment to tell me about the standing up. I should have thought to stand up and block it. But in that moment, I was just desperate. Like, I just was so
Yeah.
desperate, and it felt so fleeting and it felt so crazy that my brain was just absolute static. And all I could think about was just keep adding sticks in this fire. And in one moment my fire's horizontal, and the next it's touching the rope, and I just didn't have the wherewithal in that moment to think to block it, and that's something I have to live with, but it's okay.
Well, yeah, and I think, very understandable that there's a lot going through your head because you were living in a very complicated headspace this entire time. I mean, I want to talk about something that you mentioned right after one of the first votes you cast, but it really ended up playing out throughout your season, which is this idea of expectations versus reality, that you thought you're the super duper fan, you were going to come in and play this villainous mastermind thing, but at the end of the day, you knew that like one of your superpowers was this empathy and was this sensitivity, and it ended up manifesting in a way where you feel bad for Asia, for instance, so you vote for Saul. Talk to me about how this ended up playing out. How much did this surprise and affect the way that you approach the game?
I think my the naivete that you see from me at some points throughout the season really shines through with me going into the game thinking that I would play any other way than extremely emotionally and sensitively. Was it surprising? A little bit, but it taught me so much about myself and
Mm.
just truly how deeply I feel things and how that impacts my decision making. And I feel like starting off on the foot of the Asia vote and that being such an extremely emotional thing, it that's something I carried with me throughout the entire game. And then obviously, it was kind of like emotional hardship after emotional hardship within the game for me. And I feel like I kind of got locked into just this really, really sensitive feeling throughout the game that was really, really hard to break out of. And I think if I were to ever play again, or just in the way that I think about the things that I would change, like I would love to be able to have shut that off more, but it felt impossible to. It was so natural to just feel every emotion that entered me in that game. And I think it worked out well in some ways. I think it was a great reason why I connected with so many people. And I think that's a great reason why, I succeeded and made it as far as I did. But also it blinded me at many points. It 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 screwed things up for me as well too. But overall, it will forever be a snapshot of my soul at that point in life when I played Survivor. And I think that's something that I'll always have and I'll always get to look back on and I'll always get to use to like propel me forward to grow and change more.
Well, I think something that might have, shaken up that snapshot a little bit was, of course, your relationship with Genevieve. And you talk about these emotional hardships, a couple of them kind of laid at her feet and kind of manifested in, I think, some of the bigger emotional lows that you had. And it seemed like we saw these random conversations, right, where like the two of you would come together and then it would end with this, fractured emotional blow up between one of you. And then you come back together the next day being like, all right, let's try to figure something out. Talk to me about how you were able to manage this because it must have been so odd to say like you are absolutely leaving me in a tizzy right now, but I don't know, maybe I could work with you tonight to help me tomorrow.
I think there's two parts to this. And I'll be just extremely honest. One, I just adored Genevieve.
Hmm.
They don't show a lot of the positives of our relationship, but we were so extremely close. We still are. She is like one of my best friends from this experience, and she was so important to me out there. So even when she was doing this, even when we were having those really difficult confrontations with each other, it still felt like I was getting closer and connecting with her more in those conversations than I was with someone else when we're having like a normal, just like positive, friendly exchange. Like we were really bonding out there through thick and thin. Like even the lows made us closer. And I think the other piece to this is that I am such a fan of Survivor. I am such a big fan of Survivor. And you put me out there with Genevieve, who, by and large, if I'm watching the show at home, I am a Genevieve stan. I am obsessed with this woman and how she plays the game. And I think part of me was in awe of her and admired her. And, a part of my heart rooted for her in the game and was so impressed by the way that she played and wanted her to be there and wanted to see what she'd do next and was hopeful that I would be a part of it and not a victim of it, of course. I was hopeful that I'd fit into the story more in a different way. But I think that is a big part of it for sure.
So, speaking of, looking to be at the end, I mean, you say after everything goes down with fire making, I wish I could have made it to the end 'cause stood a real chance there. Like sincerely, what do you think your chances would have been? Let's say you do end up beating Sam, because we talk about your perception. I mean, talk to your point about being very open. You do say at one point a few days earlier, like, the only thing I'm not confused about is how confused I am. What's gonna be your pitch at that final tribal council, and how do you think you would have done against Rachel and Sue?
I had the opportunity to make Twitter so angry and talk about how I would have beat Rachel. I would have beat Rachel. No. My pitch would have been just it would have been highly highlighting my social game and my relationships and the fact that I was so well insulated that nobody ever brought my name up ever one single time. I received one vote in the game. I played to my strengths. I knew what my weaknesses were. But I'm also very aware enough to know that I don't think I would have beat Rachel. I think Rachel is the winner of Survivor 47, and that is that. And that's, I think, a lot of the reason why I feel peace about how my journey ended. I don't think I actually know I wouldn't have been a zero vote finalist. I know that Saul would have voted for me. I think that there is a potential that I could have, pulled in one or two more. But I do have more awareness than I think maybe it seems that my chances of winning based on the game that I played and the things that happened and the way the cookie crumbled weren't the best. But I'm still proud of myself for how I did and how I played and who I was out there.
Yeah, so obviously, again, as you've sort of mentioned a few times, you are quite aware of the online community that exists, almost like the second Survivor season that plays out when a Survivor season actually airs, as people are receiving and perceiving your edit and your character on the show. What has sort of been your reaction to that reaction? You talk about this being a huge dream of yours, and now sort of getting to be on the other side and seeing people in various regards react, I should say, to the game that you had played over these 25 days.
Well, for the first like 5 episodes, it was awesome. It was great, which is also very representative of the game. I feel like I started off really, really strong and I had a lot of potential and it was great. And then, the as the people are watching the game, sort of the wheels fall off for me in many ways. Like they were it was complicated. It's been complicated. It's been
Yeah.
complicated, especially after the episode where I have my outburst about Sam for sure. It's been super like enlightening to see the conversations about it because many of the things that people are saying I actually really agree with. I think a lot of the criticisms, like I have already very much so felt within myself, have already kind of tried to make amends with and find ways to grow from and learn from. It was really frustrating to not be able to speak more about it. And I'm glad that the teeny that was out there at the end kind of was able to talk about what those feelings were because I love Sam and we're great friends to this day. And I adored him out there. But there was such a mismatch because I had those like complicated inner feelings and projections and jealousy and all this other stuff. And I'm I'm a little bit, it's like it's shocking to see myself not be able to like make that connection on that day when I had that tantrum. Like it's surprising to see myself so like just unaware in that moment. But I'm proud that I was able to kind of do the work of like realizing what it was and by the end being able to speak to it.
Yeah, I mean, I have so much admiration for that because your head is so much in the game. And I think one of the many things I adore about you, Teeny, was just how open you were about everything you were feeling, about the times that you did feel left out, both, mentally and strategically. And even there, when you admit, when I think a lot of players, more than we like to think, do bring things like preconceived notions and some, to use the word biases into the game based on the way that you perceive others. I think the fact that you were able to kind of look at this and realize in the moment, yeah, this is coming from a place where I am currently in my identity journey and it's something that I manifest upon looking at you. I mean, I think that really is incredibly mature. And I'm so glad that you were able to like come to that realization just in general. But I imagine, especially in the game, it helped hold a lot of power for yourself in that moment.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's something that I feel like I'll get to look back on in like 10, 20 years when maybe I'm on a different step of my journey or I've transitioned in a different way and I'll always get to like have compassion for like that person who experienced that thing and like um yeah, it's been humbling and wild and I'm proud of myself for how I handled it and also, not proud of the ways I handled it, but I think all of it is kind of this like beautiful picture of like where I was at that moment of my life.
It's a picture of you as a person. And I mean, again, you've been a fan of the show for such a long time. That's what we want to see out there. We want to see a person. We want to see you, Teeny. And I am so happy that we got the chance to see you out there, to really be yourself. Like you said, I know it was a step in your journey, but it was such a beautiful step at the end of the day. And while obviously I wish we were talking when you were like $1 million richer, I think you are richer in a lot of different ways. And I'm so elated that we got the chance to talk and that you got the chance to be able to do this. This was such a great time, not only these past few months, but obviously getting the chance to talk today.
I know. It's just never gonna feel real. It's the thing I've loved the most in my life, and I'm so honored and grateful and just happy. Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be real next time when you get to critique all the other players for like, why did you get left out of the boat? Why are you acting that way when you didn't get picked for a reward? There, now you're truly on the other
Oh,
side of it.
trust me, I'm not critiquing anybody. No, no, no.
Well, Teeny, it's always such a fantastic time getting to chat with you, and today is no different. So thank you again for continuing to be open, including in this conversation today. And I wish you and yours nothing but the best. And thank you as always, friend. It's so great getting to chat with you.
You too. Thank you, Mike, for everything.
Yeah, of course. You have a good one. Happy holidays.
You too.
Bye.